Okay, so here is the demo for coloring, final color of your illustration. So, where did that go? This is the one I decided on. I'm going to go complementary yellow and purple. That will be the basis for what I will base my colors on, is right there. I'll use this as kind of a starting point, but then I'll get more detailed and add more subtlety to the color as we go on. Your line drawing should probably be a little bit cleaner than this. Mine's still a little messy, so if I was to do this for a full, finished illustration project, I would probably do one more layer of clean line work on here. This will work for this demo. Here's our general order of what we are going to do. First you do the flat colors, then you add in shadows, add in highlights, and then you add in smaller details like texture. Make sure you follow these steps. Don't start adding shadows before you add flat color. Don't start adding highlights before you have shadows. Just like the creative process, it's very important to stick to kind of that process and that schedule for coloring. So we can just get to it now. I have this image here for what I will be coloring based upon. I may even come here and take this little color palette, Control C from that project, over here to Control V right there. Alright, so I'm going to make a new layer. Call this flat color. I'm going to lock my clean pencils. Oops, not trash it. I'm going to, nope, not make a new layer. I'm going to lock my clean pencils layer. This is layer 2. That's colors. Lock that. Flat color. So that's the only layer I'm going to be working on. And just as I did with the to color off, I want to get rid of the white. So now you're just going to start coloring in those shapes. I like to use my lasso tool. You can do that, or you can just start going in with the brush. That is up to you. But I like to come in here and just start separating out shapes. So this process will take some time. This is where I am a little more concerned with seeing your neatness and precision here. This is a time where, yes, you should probably be coloring in the lines. It can become part of a personal style with how much you stay in the lines. Some artists are more stylized and kind of messy and loose with it. Some artists are very precise with it. I'm kind of somewhere in between. So hopefully you did your digital still life before this project, and it's going to be a very similar overall process. I don't know if you can tell, my computer's lagging a little bit. It's hot, so my computer's kind of hot. And I'm also uploading one of the previous videos to YouTube, so it's kind of doing a lot right now. So if your computer is slow, just close a bunch of programs. And if it's really slow, you can use the computers at school. So right now I'm just separating all the shapes from the sky. Now the sky is going to be yellow and everything else will be purple-ish. That looks pretty good. Okay, so then we put down a desaturated darker purple. So I'll suck up this purple and just kind of make it darker and desaturated. Cool. B, switch to my brush. If you do, you can just go in with your brush. Make sure you use a hard round one, a hard brush. So like, oh here, I'll finish coloring in this leg. You could just do it all like this with the brush. Whereas I said I'll switch it up. I'll do some with the lasso tool, some with the brush here. Usually I start with the lasso tool, then as shapes get smaller, I'll switch and just do it with the brush. Okay, so now I want this mountain here, the rock, to be a little more desaturated, so a little grayer. I also want it pretty dark. So you should also be looking at your workup sketch, making sure your values are consistent. So what I will also do from time to time as I am working on this, I will go Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, or Command U, and just turn down that saturation. Be like, oh, good, I still have dark values on the focal point, a light value behind them, and check that all as I'm working, because you don't want to lose track of values. That is why we do the that's why we do the value thumbnails first. Okay, I want these a little lighter. They're further away. Be a little more saturated. So again, coloring should be for story, for mood, not for reality. I'm not worried about the color of mountains in real life. Those mountains are further away here in the distance, so I'll have them be a little bit lighter. I might even end up mixing a little yellow into those mountains. Not right now. I can come back to that. The trees are closer than the mountains, so I want those trees to be a little darker. Like this. And again, I'm going to come back. I'm doing this a little faster, so you're not sitting me. If I was to do this, and really take my time here, this would probably be a 2 or 3 hour long project. You guys don't need to sit here and watch me do this coloring in shapes for 3 hours. So I'm going faster than you will go as I'm working through this, just to give you an idea of the process here. All right. So that's kind of the major colors there. Now let's try a little more subtlety on the person. So usually hair is darker than skin with most skin tones. Not always. Sometimes if people have tan skin and really bright blonde hair. For the most part, hair is pretty dark. So I'm going to make the hair a darker value here. I want to separate skin tone from clothes. So I will lighten up this skin just a little bit. So then it's a different value. It's the same hue as the clothes right now, a different value. So now you start to see that separation coming out. Okay. I think these shoes should be pretty dark. What do you guys think? Maybe more saturated too. So now as you guys can see, I'm pretty much just using the brush. And I'm using the magic wand tool here, so a selection tool. So I select that and then color the shoes that color. I mean, you can do it without the magic wand tool. It's just a tool that saves me some time. Alright, so I can get some shifts now here. So let's make the top here slightly different. So I can shift this hue just slightly, make it a little bit warmer and a little more saturated. Let it pop there a little bit. Warmer colors will feel a little bit closer to us, so that's not a bad thing to do. These pants, I can make them slightly bluer. Maybe that's a little too saturated. Yeah, that looks better like this. Get right there on the knee. All right. Here is the hanging bag. Maybe like that stripe along the top. Maybe we put a really saturated, like cool, bright stripe right there. The skin tone. So sometimes to adjust the color, rather than picking it right here, I will go Image, Adjustments, Hue Saturation, and I'll just kind of mess with this a little bit. You can adjust these slightly. So that's getting bluer. This is getting, I think we got to make it that a little warmer. Something like that. So Command U, same thing. That more saturated, a little darker. These trees. You can shift these towards blue maybe just slightly. That do anything? Okay. So now is the time. Again, I am not going to worry about being too perfect for this demo, but there should come a time where you want to zoom in, make your brush smaller, and be more careful with your coloring. So this is where, this isn't the fun part, really. This is the part that makes it look nice. Cleaning this up. So I'm just using this color picker tool right here. If I hold Option, it brings up the this option. Where is the color picker tool? The eyedropper tool should be somewhere. Here it is. So yeah, same thing. This eyedropper tool, if I hold Option, it brings that up. So I can just start grabbing colors. And so I grab the purple there, grab the gray, fill that in. Actually, we'll see a little bit of the sky through here. Here's another finger coming up. I mean, in your best intentions, you may see things that you need to go back and fix in your line drawing. Hopefully it's nothing big. Like if I wanted to clean up this hand drawing, I could go back and do that. Where else are we? So like here, I'll be a little more careful about getting in the lines of this guy. I don't need you to be perfectly in the lines, but basically each step between workup, sketch, color, rough, it should get neater and neater as you go on. Add some little birds out here. Birds are always good to add for a sense of movement and motion. All right. I think you all get the idea here. This would take some time for me to really go in and clean up. But let's see. So there, I'm kind of liking this overall color palette. I want to look at this value again. I'm just going to desaturate it. Darken that up a little bit. I'm just messing with the skin tone, make it look a little more natural. So just, skin tones are usually in the orangish, kind of orange to pink range. For, that's kind of your range for skin tone, is these hues in here, and then messing with the saturation and value. So I just made it slightly warmer, a little bit more pink mixed in, a little more red mixed in. So yeah, that's probably good for this step. Again, yeah, if you guys are doing this, I'd say be a little more careful with, really getting in those lines, but that will suffice for this demo. All right, so now we did flat color. I always like to check things off as I do them. Shadows, shadows. So I will lock my flat color layer here, make a new layer, and call this shadows. I'm going to use the same brush. If you ever wonder what brush to use, simplify and just kind of use the same brush. So I'm going to start going. The light source is usually from above. So shadows, I will put a little arrow coming from above. That is my light source. So that means it will be lighter on top and then darker here underneath. So you basically want the underside of everything to have some shadows. So I'm going to start on my focal point. The person is usually the first thing you want to put shadows on as your focal point. And that will help you decide where to put the sunshine. So I'm going to suck up this color of the skin. And to put shadows on, usually I just make it a little bit darker and a little bit more saturated. There is this smoothing button. Some programs have this. And so that kind of just smooths out your lines as you're drawing them. Sometimes that's helpful. This whole arm is behind. oops, the body, so it'll get a little more shadow because it's further away. The hair will cast a shadow there. Okay, the skin has shadow. Now I do the pants. You just kind of go shape by shape and add these shadows on there. And you can make your shadows darker if you want. Darker tends to be more dramatic, possibly more intense with darker shadows. With lighter shadows, it's a little more subtle. But shadows really give the idea of that three-dimensional pop. You want something to feel 3D. Like, I think that could be a little darker. Yeah, maybe like that. Hair. Those shadows will be close to black here in the hair. The hair really will, I'll add some highlights to the hair. So that's what really kind of makes the hair pop. Because hair is usually slightly shiny. So it'll get some cool highlights on it. Some interesting highlights. So I want to use a bigger brush here because this is a big shape to kind of get some shadows on here. Shadows under where the arms and feet touch. And if you need to refer to your reference photos for adding shadows, that is definitely a good thing. Okay. Sure, we can put some shadows on the trees as well. But generally, things closer to us in your focal point should have shadows. Things further away don't need shadows as much or as dramatic. So I'll put a subtle shadow here on these clouds. So I'll suck up that yellow and make it just a smidgen darker. That's hardly noticeable, a little darker. That's pretty subtle, but that's okay. All right, so you get that idea, hopefully. So add shadows on all your shapes. Biggest shapes definitely need shadows. Focal points definitely need shadows. Things further away, mountains back here. Do I put shadows on here? Maybe. If I do, I want to keep it kind of subtle. Okay. These mountains are further away. So what I want to do here is I want to mix a little yellow into this. So I'm going to suck up this yellow, and with my paint bucket tool, I'm going to turn down the opacity. I'm just going to drop a little yellow into that color, see what happens. Ooh. It'll basically give you some atmospheric perspective, which means it looks like it's fading to the color of the sky. So now those mountains in the distance are slightly yellower. So I think this is looking kind of cool. Okay, so flat color, I'll lock that again. Shadows, we'll call that good. I'm going to make a highlights layer. And this is where you want to use a soft brush. So I prefer a brush that has a little texture. I could use this soft round, but that looks like airbrush. I like this worn oil pastel. I use this brush a lot. There's a different version of it. This one. I like it because it has a texture to it, and I can turn down the opacity. So, what's cool about highlights is I'm going to use this yellow, but I'm going to keep the opacity really low, and I can just kind of start painting highlights on here. So it should be on the opposite side for the highlights on the hair. For hair, I will actually use my standard hard brush. Maybe I want a lighter purple here. Maybe more desaturated. There we go. That looks better. Okay. back to my worn oil pastel. So you could use, this one is for download on Canvas. Or you can just, so you notice when I put down this with too much opacity, I gotta turn this opacity down really low. You want highlights to be pretty subtle. I should color a few more details in those shoes too. Even here on the mountain, I can put a few highlights on the cliff face. See, this is where it's nice for that texture. So I don't want that to be a super smooth line. Oh, I need some shadows on that. On this guy. So yeah, you'll, as you see here, I'm going back and forth between the layers. You want to avoid doing that too much, but it's going to happen some. I'll turn this opacity back up. So that's getting pretty close there. It's looking kind of like a pretty cool little climbing poster or something like that. It could be an advertisement. So, and then texture is that last thing. So there isn't much texture in here. What I will do is I'll make a new layer on top of shadows. I'll call this top paint, or I can call it texture. But this is where I want to use some of these texture brushes. So texture brushes are cool, but do not overuse them. I'm going to use that same... I have a whole bunch here, and I don't use a lot of these. What are these ones? Anything kind of look like rock texture. This triangle pastel, maybe. So yeah, on top of this guy. No, that is not good. Watercolor wash. Dry brush, maybe. There we go. That looks kind of cool. So I'm not sure why it's popping up as light. These are some weird brushes. I haven't used these ones a lot, so I'm going to just stick with my worn oil adjusted. Okay, this one has a nice texture to it already. So now I can put some texture in this rock here. I want to turn down the opacity, turn down the flow too. Let's put some of this nice subtle texture in the rock. Don't do too much with it, but some is good. I'll even do it on these trees too. A little bit lighter. I'll do it with some of this dark texture as well. You can soften the edges of your shadows too in this step. So you see I'm smoothing out that shadow, making it really look like a form shadow as opposed to a cast shadow. Yeah, so that's just kind of up to you guys how much you want to do with that. In terms of adding texture, I do want this to feel like a rock. And then I'll also come back with a regular brush and just draw in some texture as well. Drawing cracks, drawing little dots. Up this a little bit. So generally put more textures in the foreground and put more textures on the focal point. Things further away don't need texture. Alright, so then this will be your final piece of art here. And what I would do here, we see this is going outside of the frame. I would make a frame layer. So I'll just make a box here with my selection tool. That's just this rectangular selection tool right here. If you make this is how to do it in Photoshop. There's probably ways to do it in other programs as well. Actually, I'll just do it easier. So I'll just take this, my brush, turn it up to full opacity, pure black. I just call this frame layer, R-A-M-E. Draw a line here. A nice dark frame line here. Frame here. Frame there. Then I'm going to take my paint bucket tool, grab some white, and put the white there. Oops. Turn up the opacity. Alright, where did it break through? I can do this with my... Now I'm just using the selection tool with boxes. I just want to create a clean frame on top. So I'm just trying to fill in this white area outside of the frame and let the inside be transparent. Okay, let's try that. And top paint, just turn all of these layers back on. There we go. So now that will be my final art. Don't need those words on there anymore, wherever those went. Anyways. So yeah, then you will just save this as a JPEG file and count that as done for your final illustrated art. Again, you should have a little bit cleaner line work. Make sure your, all your colors are inside there, but this is what you will be turning in this. I want to see this. I will want to see your color roughs as you turn them in. And you can include just your line art on its own as well. And feel free to send me this in any part along the process if you need help with your drawing, help with perspective, help with the anatomy. I am here to help you guys with any of that. Just send me an email with your work, and please don't hesitate to reach out. But I look forward to seeing what your final art looks like.